Cracked soil under the blazing sun. Farmers toil in the field while children run barefoot through the village. My name is Kofi, and this is my story. I grew up in a small village in Ghana where life was simple but tough. My father worked the land tirelessly, planting crops that barely grew. My mother sold wares at the market, her face etched with worry every day. As a child, I'd help my father in the fields and then run errands for my mother at a crowded marketplace. School was a distant dream for most of us. I attended when I could, but many days were spent helping my family survive. I always dreamed of something more, a life where my family didn't have to choose between buying food and fixing our leaky roof. I would most times sit under a tree and sketch pictures of planes and skyscrapers, my eyes filled with wonder. I heard stories of Europe from a neighbor's son who returned briefly with shiny clothes and big promises. He said the streets were paved with opportunities. I knew then that I had to go. I sat outside the house with my parents in our modest home. A single oil lamp flickers and we speak in hushed tones. Telling my parents was the hardest part. My mother cried, saying she couldn't bear to lose me. My father stared at the ground, silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "If this is your path, Kofi, go. But don't forget us." I packed a small bag, placed family photos and a worn notebook inside, and hugged my siblings goodbye. I sold what little I had, my bicycle, my favorite books, and gathered enough money for the first leg of my journey. I wasn't sure how I'd get to Europe, but I was determined. I started my journey in a crowded bus through dusty roads, and then boarded a rickety boat with others heading for North Africa. The journey to North Africa was grueling. Days turned into weeks as I crossed borders, traveling with strangers who shared the same dream. At every checkpoint, fear gripped us. We bribed guards, hid in cramped spaces, and prayed not to be caught. I was tense and others hid at the back of a truck as soldiers inspected vehicles nearby. In Algeria, I worked on construction sites for months to save money for the next step. The heat was unbearable and the pay was meager, but I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. A small overcrowded boat rocking on turbulent waves under a dark sky. Crossing the Mediterranean was the most terrifying part. We were packed onto a flimsy boat, the salty air stinging our faces. The water seemed endless, and every wave felt like it would swallow us whole. Some people on the boat were praying, holding onto each other, and some cried quietly. On the second night, the storm hit. The boat rocked violently, and we lost some of our supplies. I held onto a stranger's hand, whispering prayers I hadn't said in years. When we finally saw the lights of the Italian coast, tears streamed down my face. We had made it. I walked through the crowded streets of a European city, overwhelmed by the tall buildings and bustling crowds. Europe wasn't what I imagined. The streets weren't paved with gold, and opportunities didn't come knocking. I found myself living in a crowded shelter with other migrants searching for work every day. I began sending out resumes at construction sites, being turned away repeatedly. I took any job I could find, washing dishes, cleaning streets, even picking fruit on farms. The pay was low, and the hours were long, but I sent every spare euro back home. My family's letters kept me going. They were proud of me, even though I felt like I was barely surviving. I was yelled at by a shop owner after asking for a job, then walking away and my head down. Being a migrant wasn't easy. People looked at me like I didn't belong. Some called me names, others refused to even speak to me. I felt invisible, like I was fighting a battle no one could see. Out of frustration, I sat alone in a park, staring at a photo of my family, then writing in my notebook. But I didn't let it break me. I reminded myself that I came here with a purpose, to create a better life for my family and myself. I met a kind man at a community center who offered me free language lessons. I found hope in unexpected places. A man named Dr. Dale who ran a community center for migrants. He taught me the language and helped me understand the system. Slowly, doors began to open. I worked at a construction site, my confidence grew as I spoke with coworkers in their language. I saved enough to move out of the shelter and into a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, I felt like I was building something. I boarded a plane with a small suitcase, looking out the window as the plane took off. Years later, I returned to my village. I wasn't rich, but I had built a life I could be proud of. My family welcomed me with open arms, their smiles brighter than I'd ever seen. I embraced my parents and gave my mother a necklace I bought in Europe. I shared my experiences with the villagers, hoping to inspire others. My journey wasn't easy, but it taught me resilience, humility, and the power of hope. I decided to invest in my community. With the skills I learned abroad, I started a small business and created jobs. Seeing others thrive reminded me why I left in the first place. Children were laughing as I told them stories of my journey, the village bustling with newfound activity. This is my story, a story of dreams, struggles, and triumphs. If you take anything from it, let it be this: never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like and share. See you in the next video.